Hello and welcome to my little explanation on how to do an escape room. This escape room is done with Google Sites, Google Forms, and ThingLink, which is a really cool website. I did upgrade to the paid version, so some of these features are not free. If you're interested, I was able to find like a discount code, and I think it was about $37 for the year to use ThingLink. So just keep that in mind when you're watching this. You might not have access to all of these features that I was able to do. So my second attempt at an escape room or a breakout room it's a little bit different. This time it was more of an adventure. So I took the idea of a trip to Europe, and students were able to quote unquote earn their way through Europe by answering more questions correctly on their Unit 5 test review. So I started the escape room idea with the Google site. I have my header, and then this is the embedded website from ThingLink, and I'll show you a little bit more about ThingLink in a second. I did have to play around quite a bit with ThingLink to kind of figure it all out and how it all worked, but once you get the hang of it, there are some tutorials out there as well. Once you get the hang of it, it'll go a little bit faster. But this is definitely more elaborate than my first attempt at a breakout room. So next year, I'll definitely want to plan these out a little bit more in advance so that I have some time to tweak things and really kind of make things fun for the students. So over here I have the little preface for what this escape room idea is all about. So the students have an opportunity to travel through Europe, and the question is, how many cities are you going to be able to visit? So this also gives them instructions on how to start. So there's going to be a label in here, and I'll show you that in a second, labeled number 1, and they're going to work their way through your once-in-a-lifetime adventure. And then just a little side note that when they're putting their answers into the Google Forms, again, that's how I'm collecting all of my data from my students, they're not going to put any spaces when they're putting in their answers. Below that, on my Google site, I have just some keys for what everything means in the ThingLink. So when they enter a city, they're going to see bubbles with numbers in them, and those are going to be the questions that they answer in that order. There's also going to be an arrow, which is a symbol that indicates that's where they're going to put their answers in. And then the home button, it will return them back to the world overview map. So this is their key for using the ThingLink website. And then just like in the last video, we have the help section. This is the embedded Google slide for the Unit 5 test review. So if they click on each button, it will bring them to how to solve each of those questions if they get totally stuck. Or let's say they answer something and they can't figure out which one they got wrong, they can go back and watch those and figure, kind of help self-check that way as well. Okay, so let me show you, let's preview this so you can see what this would look like. So they would click on this embedded content here, and they're going to go and find, it says to start at label number 1, they'd find label number 1. So we're starting in Atlanta. It is required that they put in their first and last name. So I'm just going to do a test here. And then they're going to answer this question. If they need help, I do have the embedded video here that they could click on if they don't remember how to find the mean, median, and the mode. And then here, the first code for them to get to their next stage in their trip is to enter the answer for all of the questions. And again, there were no spaces. This was the correct answer, but I just want to show you what would happen in my Google form. So when I click next, it makes them their own boarding pass. And yes, I did actually create, I went and found a boarding pass template, and I made them as close as I could to an actual Delta boarding pass. So this is where things took me a little bit longer was to make it a little bit more detailed and personal for my class. Once they get their boarding pass, and sometimes they'll have like a train ticket, they have to enter a piece of information from that. So here they just have to enter their flight number. So DL82, they can read that on their boarding pass, and then they can submit that answer. So this tells them, congratulations, you've earned your boarding pass, and now we're on our way to Paris, France. So it tells them to go ahead and click on number 2 on the world map for their next adventure. So when we go to number 2, it brings them to Paris, France. This is why ThingLink is so cool and why I paid the $37 for it. Now, keep in mind that I think the actual like yearly fee is $120. So I'm hoping to get a bunch of these made before my subscription runs out next year, because $120 is a lot of money to spend for the year. But with the code, I think I had, it was like 70% off or something like that. It was much more affordable. So when they get here, they start with number 1. And now I used Google Slides for each question. So it's similar to the last one. I'm still using Google. I'm still embedding things, but it's just a little bit different because I'm using ThingLink as well. So here I have the question. They can click on the Need Help tab, which will open up the actual slide with the video embedded in it if they need to watch how to solve the question. Okay, so if I come back, they would record their answers on a piece of paper because they're going to enter all of their answers on the Google form at the end. So here's question 5. Again, they can click Need Help if they need help. And then they have to go find, there's number 3 in the car. And they'll go ahead and answer that question as well. The arrow tells them if they scroll over that they're going to enter their answers here. And this is where the Google form pops up at some point. There we go. So again, they put in their first and last name, and then they're going to put in their code for each of those. And when they do that, and they do it correctly, they're going to get the next piece of information. And I'll show you in here what that looks like in more detail. So questions 4 through 6 would have been Paris. So you can see this is what my Google form looks like. I have, these are all required. So when they're in one city, I did make these required this time. Again, I used that response validation so that they can actually check their work. So they're typing in all of their answers together, no spaces, and then that will let them know if they got it right or wrong. Told them to ask for help if needed, if they're not getting the right answer. And then once they submit their answers and they go to the next section, notice here I made a second section in my Google form, and here I made a train ticket, and they're going to go to Venice. So I did a little editing, found some train information on Google, and then they just have to tell me what time they're leaving Paris based on this information, and that will get them to their next city of Venice. So that's kind of how I did that. Once they finish, they can go back to the world view and they can go to Venice, and then they're going to end their trip in London before they get back to Atlanta. So you can kind of see how that worked. And so every city that they go to, there's 3 questions. They submit their answers, they can check their work, they can get help. Same idea. This is just a little bit more involved and detailed than my first recording. This is the actual ThingLink website. This is how you would edit things. Let's save and exit. So when you go into ThingLink, there are tons of like 3D options. These are the ones that I was looking at to use. Again, I think to use the 360 or the virtual reality part, you have to be a paid subscriber. But you can get other cool things and still link and embed, even with just your images. So it's a cool website to play around with if you are interested. Thanks for watching, and again, if you have any questions, just let me know.